How is it rocking, Dwayne Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dwayne Nation and the brand that is Dwayne Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dwayne Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are here to talk about starts and sits of the week for week 6 of the NFL football season. We just discussed some bold predictions, some game predictions together, and we're going to wrap it all up right here with some starts of the week. And then we actually have another special, Dwayne Sports special episode later today with a friend of ours. So we're excited to do that. But this is starts of the week, which we've had, all season, guys that we think are must-haves in your lineup, and also a player that you should not be putting into your lineup this week. I'm excited to get to it, but before we do it, how you feeling today, Jano?
Yo, Dwayne Nation. I'm doing so good, Justin. I mean, this has been such a fun week. I'm so excited that, we do get another Sunday early morning game. So that makes breakfast a little more fun. It makes the anticipation of waiting for all the games to start on Sunday afternoon just much better there. And it's a pretty interesting matchup. Not the best, but not bad. We get a battle of former number one picks overall, former number one picks or two, number one picks in our league. And so, but Justin, we got to let the people know out there in Dewey Nation on who to start and who to sit.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. There's a few names, a must start names, and guys that were recently, or a couple that could be on your waiver wires, to be honest with you. And then other guys that obviously are on rosters, but you might have questions with them. But let's start at the top, where I have Kirk Cousins going into Carolina and having a phenomenal game is a must start, especially off of a game where you throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. You can't really be on the bench the next week, especially with the matchup that Kirk Cousins has against one of the worst pass defenses in the NFL. They're 27th in fantasy points given up to the quarterback position. You got Drake London, you got Darnell Mooney, you got Kyle Pitts, you got Bijan Robinson. All is a perfect combination for Kirk to not have 500 yards again, but do pretty darn good and be a top 10 quarterback for sure.
Wow, Justin, that is a pretty good take. I mean, honestly, Kirk Cousins is going to be possibly a guy that we're looking at now that's going to be a start every week, and he's going to need to prove what last week wasn't a fluke, and he had some time to rest because that was last week's Thursday night game, and so now he has a chance to really have a great game on the road. Kirk Cousins has some struggle games on the road historically in his career. He's always been good in Minnesota when he played at home. He's always really, so far he's been pretty decent when he's played. Obviously, this last game it was home and for the Falcons, and so, he's going to need to go ahead and do it on the road, and it's not going to be too hard there in Carolina. That defense is probably one of the worst. Caleb Williams had a great game against them last week, and they're going to be kind of the worst passing defense all year. We know J.C. Horn is pretty good, but the rest of that defense is awful, and so definitely like Kirk Cousins there. Drake London is kind of taking off. Mooney's taking off as a great wide receiver too. We're hoping Kyle Pitts gets in on that, as well as Bijan from the passing game. I'm really hoping for a great Bijan game. And so, for my quarterback, I'm going to go with Dak Prescott. And this is going to be my game of the week. And that's going to be, the Lions at Dallas. And this game can go two ways, Justin, I believe. Whether the Cowboys come out on top, Dak Prescott starts off with 2 to 3 passing touchdowns and they go up 21-3, or which is something we've seen this season, where the team like the Lions goes in there into Dallas and beats up on the Cowboys for the first half, and Dak is playing catch up, mid third quarter, and he ends up with 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Either way, I feel like Dak Prescott is going to need to go off. This running game isn't so established yet, and we'll probably get to that later in the segment. And so I think that this Cowboys offense at home, they're so good at home. And a sleeper, Justin, actually, to go along with Dak Prescott, I'm just going to tag real quick, is Jalen Tolbert. He did score a touchdown last week, and he did score a touchdown in their last home game that they had against the Ravens. He's a guy that Brandon Cooks is now on IR. Right. Jake Ferguson, he is the second guy that Dak goes to, but they're going to need a wide receiver to kind of draw attention away from CeeDee Lamb. This is going to be a shootout, no doubt. And so I like Dak Prescott can just pass, pass, pass. I think maybe Jake Ferguson does get a touchdown this week. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb is sensational. He's a top 3 wide receiver. You can make the argument he's a top 3, top 2 fantasy wide receiver. And when he's at home, he is dynamite. Justin, the last time these two teams faced off, you and I were together, CeeDee Lamb had a 92-yard receiving touchdown there. Dak Prescott had a great game. Jared Goff had a great game. It was a fantastic finish. Justin, this game came on championship week, so championships all across the fantasy world were won. And so I like Dak Prescott this week. He is the biggest must start of this week. And hey, what better player to have than Dak Prescott at home, down 20? Even in this past year's wild card matchup, he was down by like 25 or something like that to Green Bay. Was able to have a sensational stat line there. So I think that just translates to any time in fantasy that you see Dak Prescott at home. And so, hey, that just screams W's across the board there in fantasy.
No, I think Dak is a great play. In a game where they just came off of a huge moral victory. They were in Pittsburgh and they won, with 20 seconds remaining in the game. They go into this game at home where I kind of think the script's going to be like how Baltimore's kind of game was. I think Detroit's going to jump out early and Dallas is going to be catching up, and that's all Dak. That's all throwing, passing the rock, especially with the Lions' very strong run defense. So I like that pick there. Moving to running back, I'm sorry, I'm sticking on this Falcons train. I have Bijan Robinson as my start of the week, and this is kind of more of like a PSA. Like, hey, Bijan, you haven't really been there, man. We haven't seen it yet. I don't know if it's your fault or the coach's fault, but you really need to start playing some good fantasy football and live up to the value that we drafted you to be. And in a game with one of the worst running defenses in football against the Carolina Panthers, they're 31st, so they've given up a lot of points to the running back position. This is kind of one of those weeks where we've seen Bijan struggle, and if he struggles again against the Panthers, I might have to be OUT. And OUT not being like cut or anything, but OUT like I'm trying to shit this guy out for his name value and get him off my team, and try to get some value before it continues to kind of be like kind of middling. This is his week. He's got to do it. And usually when I've said, hey, I'm about to be OUT on somebody this year, they've stepped up in that week. It was Pittman, it was Javonte Williams. So I think this is my PSA. If you hear me out there, Bijan, this is your week, bro. You have the matchup, and I think Carolina's going to stick in it, be able to be in this game, and Bijan's going to have a great game, best of the season for sure.
Yeah, Justin, I'm actually hoping that happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have Bijan in one of our leagues, and how much I love my fellow beloved Longhorns there. I know you hate them. You hate burnt orange, and that hurts my heart. And I love my family at the Maroon gang. I love you guys. I mean, I love my people from College Station, but it's okay. But you know how much I love my Longhorns, and so I do believe that Bijan is going to get back on track. I'm hoping he does. Carolina stinks, and Swift was able to go off last week, and Roschon Johnson, I think, had 2 rushing touchdowns. So Swift had a rushing touchdowns, and I think about 80 yards. And then Roschon Johnson was able as well. So that's pretty crazy. For my starting running back of the week, I'm going to go with James Conner. And Green Bay's defense, that's where James Conner will be in. He will be in Lambeau, facing off against those Packers. They struggle a little bit. Last week they did give up 102 to Kyron. Obviously, he's been sensational this year, and Kyron Williams. But even Jonathan Taylor had a good 100 yards on him a few weeks ago as well. Even though that Colts offense was struggling. And you look at the Packers; they're pretty good. They're a pretty solid defense, right? But the Russian defense can let loose. We can't forget that great Week 1 game that Saquon Barkley had in his, Eagles debut there in Brazil, torched the Packers up. And so, I kind of, even Aaron Jones had a pretty solid game in Green Bay in his return. And so, this defense they're not that good at the rush. And so I feel like James Conner, he's going to go off, and we love that Arizona offense. They're getting better. I believe in Kyler. He's going to get it together. And I think that, with Jair Alexander, he's going to focus on the rookie, Marvin Harrison. The Green Bay defense coordinators, they're going to be kind of thinking that Kyler is going to want to pass. And I think he's going to get his in the passing game. But I feel like they're also going to be looking at Kyler in the rushing game with his own abilities to rush. And I feel like James Conner has been really good this year. And you know what? I think he's going to keep it going. He's going to have a pretty good game. I'm thinking 120 yards. And I'm thinking 2 touchdowns there for James Conner. He's a very great goal line back. He's going to get those goal line, touches. His volume's great. We're not really worried about Trey Benson easing in there, or Emercado, I think his name is, and Emercado. And so I do believe that James Conner has a great game on the ground, and he finishes as a top 5 running back this week.
No, I think James Conner is going to be a great play. And the way I look at it actually is I kind of foresee this game being somewhat like Green Bay versus Indianapolis in week 2, where the passing offense is struggling. I think Green Bay is going to have a plan. Like I have Kyler in a couple leagues. I unfortunately don't expect a huge game from him. And I think Arizona is going to realize how difficult it is with maybe Marvin being locked down and them being in Lambeau. They're going to hand it off to their bruiser back and James Conner. And I expect him to kind of be the factor that keeps them in this game. So I think that's a great pick. Moving to wide receiver, I have Calvin Ridley of the Tennessee Titans. Yes, it's been ugly. He's only had one good game. In the last 2 games, he's only had 1 catch in each of them. So there's definitely worries. This takes some guts, this takes some spice to kind of go into. But he's playing the Colts, one of the worst pass defenses in the National Football League right now. In a game where we've actually talked about this in our last episode, how important it is for Will Levis to step up and secure his starting position when and Mason Rudolph is lingering, even though that's kind of crazy to say that Mason Rudolph's trying to steal your job as an NFL quarterback. That should never be the case. But Will Levis has struggled, and this is the week coming off the bye at home with a lot of good weapons. Calvin Ridley is to me the best of them, and he's due. He is due for a big game. They paid him to be that guy, to be their number 1 wide receiver, and so I think he has a huge game.
Yeah, Justin. Yeah, for those at Dwayne Nation who haven't, checked out our spicy, predictions. We talked about. I said that I need Will Levis. I believe that Will Levis is going to have 350 to 400 passing yards, and part of that's going to be because of Calvin Ridley. He's going to have a great game. There's not really a premier, shutdown corner that the Colts have there, and they are playing in Tennessee, so I like that better for all Tennessee playmakers there. And I do feel like, if Calvin really doesn't have it this week, Justin, I'm going to take your saying. I'm going to be OUT on him this week. It's now or never for Calvin Ridley. Yes, he was good in Atlanta. He was suspended after they got rid of him. He came back and struggled in Jacksonville, and I took his side. I defended him. I said, you know what, maybe a year away from football, he caught up to him. But he's a talented person. He was really good at the University of Alabama, really good with the Falcons. And he had some flashes last year with Jacksonville, but it's time for him to really put his name as those pretty good Alabama receivers that have been shining here in the NFL. He needs to kind of, raise his name to the table there. And so hoping Calvin really has a great game there because I'm a Texans fan. I really cannot stand the Colts there. So, hey, hopefully the Titans can pull one out there like that. For me, I'm going to go with Mike Evans. And so this is a guy that has a personal bad blood with the Saints. He's had some issues there with Marshawn Lattimore, and that's going to be a thing for this guy in his Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame career there. He's had some great games against, this is no, new opponent for Mike Evans. This is probably his greatest arch nemesis. We love Mike Evans. I know you do. He's a fellow Aggie. He's had some great games. I'm looking at 147 yards, a touchdown. The past couple games, though, he's been a little quiet against the Saints. And so he has big playmaking ability. I'm looking at his, career highlights. He has a lot of touchdowns outside of 45-50 in the Superdome. Some of them were behind Jameis Winston. Some of them were behind Tom Brady. Some behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I think Baker Mayfield is able to have a great game as well. And so I like Mike Evans this week. I think he's going to have a bomb of a touchdown. I'm thinking 55. He's going to finish on the day 136 for 2 scores. And if you watch, once again, Dewey Nation, if you watch our bold predictions, we think that this is going to be a great game, a shootout. I think Spencer Rattler is going to have a great game, and that's going to require the Saints to have a great game too. Offensively, it's going to be a shootout. And I like Mike Evans to have a great game this week, and I think he's going to finish top 5, maybe top 6. There's a lot of great matchups this week, potential shootouts. And so Mike Evans, I believe, finishes a top 6 fantasy wide receiver this week.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree with you here. I think, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to have 2 sits of the week because I have Mike Evans as a sit of the week. I look at it and it's the fact that him and his career against the Saints in 19 opportunities to play against the Saints in Mike Evans' career. Some of them, he gets suspended in, but he's only averaged 50.5 yards against the Saints and has only scored 5 touchdowns in 19 games against New Orleans. It's crazy to think that this team, for some reason, has Mike Evans' number, and Marshawn Lattimore has been able to lock him down. I don't like I if you told me why, I think Mike Evans is a better wide receiver than Marshawn Lattimore as a cornerback. But for some reason, Mike Evans always struggles against the Saints. And so I'm going to have to be the contrary on this one. I think Mike Evans struggles in this game. I'm actually starting Wan'Dale Robinson over him this week, especially with the news that Malik Neighbors is not practicing today. But yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't want to be the bad news guy, but I just don't see it happening. I see maybe Chris Godwin. It's got to be Chris Godwin if Tampa Bay wants to succeed. But for some reason, New Orleans has the recipe on limiting Mike Evans. Moving to my now other sit of the week. You briefly foreshadowed it, and it's Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, he scored 2 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, one against Pittsburgh, one against the Giants. Now he goes against the arguable best run defense in the NFL in a game that I do think Dallas will be behind in. I think that Rico Dowdle is not going to get the carries he wants. Hopefully, he gets some receptions out of the backfield. That's kind of going to be his saving grace to me. If he gets any to help your lineups, if you have to start him. I know in one league I have to start him with Taylor being out and Devon Achane being on bye. I have to start him but it's going to be tough. I don't love the matchup. And I just don't love the situation that Dallas is going to run into for Rico to be a good play this week.
Yeah, Justin, with the Cowboys offense, they're still trying to look for their guy. Yes, Rico Dowdle's looked the best out of all, their 3 backs. But I feel like they're always going to be a pass-heavy offense no matter what. They're not really focused on the running game. I think they kind of go to it if they need it through game script. And so last week in Pittsburgh, I kind of feel like it was a rough and tough game. They knew they weren't going to be able to pass it that much because, Dak Prescott did have a couple touchdowns throwing. I think Dowdle had one of them. But he was still able to get some off the ground there. And I think that this week it won't be, like that. You mentioned how good Detroit is. Their defense is actually really solid than we think. I do think they're going to be able to stop the run there. So I really like that. I feel like eventually they probably might start throwing in Deuce Vaughn at some point this year. I think we might get one more classic, like maybe Zeke game. Not saying he goes over 50, 60 yards rushing, but maybe he gets a couple touchdowns there in the red zone. And so, Rico Dowdle is a running back that I'm looking to sell right now just because, yes, he looks pretty good, but I'm just still not a believer in that Dallas run game. I was more of a believer the last 2 years with Pollard than I was with Dowdle there. So a little bit doubtful on Dowdle. So I kind of agree with you there. A guy that I'm going to go with as my sit of the week is Christian Kirk. The Bears defense is really good. And we kind of spoke about earlier on how, in our bold predictions that, that Jacksonville running game is going to be really good. And so I don't think they're going to really be relying on the passing game. Yes, I think Brian Thomas gets his. He's the hot hand. But Christian Kirk's going to be at the short end of the stick this week. And I feel like, Jacksonville might be kind of playing with some sort of a lead there. I feel like they're going to be rushing, kind of running, chewing the clock. And Christian Kirk, I believe, is going to struggle against this tough Chicago secondary. They've been pretty good at the passing, this year. The Bears, they're a little bit porous in the running, so I don't think Christian Kirk gets too much looks there. He did struggle for the first couple weeks of the season. He's had a couple, 1 out of 2 weeks, not so bad, whatever. And so, I like Christian Kirk, a guy that you can just sit this week and not really stress about it. There's other guys to look out there. I'm liking a Jameson Williams over him, Justin. Maybe like a Lad McConkey. kind of at that range. I'm kind of looking at over Christian Kirk. Maybe a guy like Jalen Tolbert, maybe a guy that I kind of spoke on earlier. Definitely like guys like Mooney over him, and so definitely a guy Christian Kirk I'm sitting this week.
No, I think Kirk is a prime sit candidate this week, especially with the possible return of Evan Ingram. That's kind of where Christian Kirk kind of works out of that short intermediary area, even though last week most of his production came on one deep ball. But I agree. I think Kirk's playing a very tough defense in a game where the Bears are a run funneled kind of defense where they're, as you mentioned, Jacksonville, I think is going to rely on the run heavily this game, especially with how good it's been, especially last week with Tank and Travis Etienne. So I agree. Kirk's kind of in a space where I'm not looking to start him this week. I would love to start Mooney and even Jalen Tolbert. I think Tolbert's gonna be a great play this week against the Lions. So I agree there. So moving past our sits, we end our episode as always with our kickers of the week. We both got one name. I got Nick Folk, Titans kicker. I think, as you mentioned, Colts defense sucks. Titans are going to be in scoring range. I'm, of course, iffy on Will Levis and his skill as a quarterback, but I think they're going to get close enough to kick some field goals.
Love it, love it, love it. I'm gonna go with Justin Tucker. This is like the first time I can remember that Justin Tucker is on a lot of waiver wires this year. Justin, a little bit worried about that. Our fellow Justin here is struggling. My fellow Longhorn, really.
That's
Once
right.
again, I love my fellow Longhorns here, and so I think he's going to get back on track there. They are home. This is going to be a shootout. I do believe that there's going to be some drives where Lamar probably won't be able to get it nearly into the red zone. That leaves Justin Tucker there. I do think maybe he gets a long one before the half. There could be an instance where he is kicking a field goal to send them to OT to win OT. There's a lot of scenarios that I think Justin Tucker can be involved here. Not to mention the extra points he's going to be able to stack on. We've touched on this in our previous episodes for this week that this is going to be a shootout. Lamar might finish one. Jaden Daniels might finish one. Lamar might be number one in MVP rankings. Jaden Daniels will move closer to locking in that rookie of the year. And so, you know what? Justin Tucker is going to be involved in that offense, getting field goals outside of 50, 40. And so the extra points will stack up there. And so I definitely like Justin Tucker to have a comeback game this week in Baltimore.
Yeah, no, I think you always look at a kicker that is going to be in scoring position. Just about every drive their team is on the field, and Baltimore's the kind of the goal of that. So I agree in a matchup that I have as the game of the week, and I expect a lot of scoring. I could see one of these kickers winning their team the game in that game, and as well as my kicker. So I agree. Dewey Nation, that is our starts instead of the week. That we still have another episode coming out for you guys, so stay tuned for that. More coverage is on the way to help you guys with your week 6 lineups and rest of the season kind of prep and outlook. So we're excited to do that. So thank you guys for listening. Keep following Doing Sports. Share it with people. Let's keep building it up. That's the goal, ultimate goal, to be amongst the greatest of sports podcasters. And so yeah, thank you guys for listening. And Jano, send us out.
Yeah, Dewey Nation. Yeah, with a touch upon Justin there. It was so much fun. Speaking to you guys there, it's going to be a fun week. We have so much content out here now on YouTube. And so, Justin, this was such a fun week. We're so excited now to speak on what happens now. Like the next fun part there is to speak about what actually happens, to see if we were right or wrong, and kind of observe the new. There's always something new there that happens that we didn't expect to happen there. So, Dewey Nation, we love you guys. Continue to keep going along with us. This season, it's a great season, and what better person to do this with than Justin, and that's my guy right there. And so, you know what I mean? Great episode there, Justin. And so, Dewey Nation, we love you guys. Thanks for watching. Send this to your friends, your mom, your grandma, your uncle, your uncle's grandma, your grandma's uncle, whoever. They might want to watch it and have a great time and listen to some fantasy sports with us studs there. So, Dewey Nation, we love you guys. And as always, peace.
Peace.